So hello, Farmingdale. First starting by just saying thank you to everybody, who's listening right now. Obviously, most of you are connected and understand full well we have an important vote coming up on Tuesday of next week, voting at the polls from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. For a bond vote to talk about two different propositions. My name is Paul Defendini, the very proud superintendent here at Farmingdale Schools, and this is an opportunity for residents to have any last second questions that they might have connected to the bond proposition answered. The thing that I talk about all the time and the thing that's most important to me is trying to put together and never to sell anything, but to try to put together a thoughtful plan that's in the best interest of our students, that's in the best interest of our community, and then to do the best job I possibly can communicating that plan, with the help of my team here to the community, so you have an informed electorate, right? That's the most powerful thing we can hope for, is to have an informed electorate so that people can go to the polls on Tuesday with the best information that we possibly can supply them with to make an informed decision. So this is just a continuation of that same effort. So again, thank you very much for joining us. The way that the format's going to run, I'm going to have Sam Thompson with me here, who's going to be asking me the questions from residents, and we're going to go from there. We're going to do the best job we can trying to thoughtfully answer those questions. Just a quick reminder before we get into the Q&A is just, if you have additional questions, you could certainly still post those questions to our website. We have a Google form up there that we're using to answer any questions that still are lingering. And it has more information for anyone that's looking for more information on it. The dialogue doesn't end with this recording. We still have a few more days before the vote, and I want to make sure that your last second questions are answered, and then you have a source to go to for that, and that is us. So our website's still the place to go for any information. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thompson, whose voice you're going to hear in the background, asking me a series of questions, from our community, and we'll go from there. All right, Dr. Thompson, you're up.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Zaffandini. The first question we had was around construction costs. The fact that construction costs may often run over the estimate. How will this impact the bond?
It's a great question to start off with. So yeah, there's an understanding right now that whatever estimate we might put into place connected to the bond vote could at some point in time change as a result of varying conditions, right? And we actually include that in the number that we propose. So the $78 million connected to the bond proposition includes two different provisions that help us to handle those kinds of dynamics. The first is market fluctuation. So we have built into the bond an understanding that the chances are, obviously, we're not going to finish this for several years. This isn't something that we obviously, we get the go ahead on Tuesday and we're starting work by Friday. There's a lot that needs to be done, getting approvals and the like, before we're able to even bid the project out. So part of the escalating fees, or the fees that we have built in there for increases, is market conditions that could change. The second is we have another 10% contingency built into the bond as well, that allows us to handle other things that are unforeseen, right? Some of the project includes reconstruction of new areas, right? Areas behind the high school that haven't been dug out yet. And in truth, we don't know exactly what's under the ground, so you can't forecast for every potential cost that we could incur. And we have to build in for that contingency as well. And please know that this bond proposition will cover the full extent of what we're indicating that we're able to complete, because of the fact that we have those contingencies already built into the bond to make sure that we're not in that place that we're not able to deliver on our promise. But great question.
Does the state cover any cost for the bond construction related to capital projects?
Yeah, so there are other sources of revenue that are going to help to support the cost of the bond proposition. So right out of the gate, we've been working with our architects and our engineers in order to make sure that we build the project in a way that assures the project is fully fundable from state sources. And as a result of the way in which the bond was built, 55% of the total cost of the bond is actually going to be picked up by the state. So in the end, the community is only responsible for 45% of the total cost to the bond, because of the fact that the state is going to be paying 55% of the cost.
So there's a question here about the difference between the town of Oyster Bay tax rate and whether Farmingdale School District has anything to do with that. There's a recent increase.
Yeah, so I guess connected to the bond, you know, because of the fact that we're talking about our tax base. So there was a circumstance that existed that really is at we're at no fault. We as a school district didn't do anything wrong. But the town of Babylon residents are seeing a dramatic increase in their tax bill. And what's happening is because of the way in which uh, uh, the apportionment of the taxes work between two different taxing jurisdictions. There's only a few districts on Long Island that have to contend with this. We are one of three. Amityville and Cold Spring Harbor also has this thing where they live on the border between two different taxing jurisdictions. We live on the border between Nassau County and the town of Babylon. So 80% of our community lives on the Nassau County side, 20% lives on the town of Babylon side. And when we set our levy, we have to apportion the taxes to those jurisdictions so that they can collect the taxes on the district's behalf. When that apportionment was done, there's a rate called an equalization rate that's used up at the Office of Real Property and Taxation Services. They send us those rates that we need to use in order to be able to apportion the taxes. And when we receive those rates, what happened was a disproportionate portion of the levy got pushed over to the Babylon residents. So ultimately, Nassau County residents in total are seeing a decrease in their levy year over year. Again, that doesn't mean every resident's bill went down, but in total, the amount of money that's coming from Nassau County for the current year is less from the Nassau County side than it was last year. And counter to that, the town of Babylon residents are actually seeing a dramatic increase because they're picking up the amount that the Nassau County residents saw as a decrease, plus the remainder of the levy that we needed in order to be able to support programs this year. So they're seeing a disproportional increase in their bill. Absolutely unfair, unfounded, not right. I've been speaking to the Board of Education about this. I actually had a meeting on Monday morning. I'm sorry, on Thursday morning of this week with Rich Schaefer, the town of Babylon supervisor, and his team. And we're putting together a plan as to how to rectify this situation. The bottom line is it's not right. This is some sort of a technical error that exists up at the state level in setting these rates. And it pushed the levy over unfairly to the Babylon residents. And we are committed to coming up with a resolution. So be assured, we're going to work with the board. We're going to work with the town of Babylon, who have been wonderful partners to us in this, to come up with some sort of a resolution because it's not right. It's not fair, and it doesn't reflect, the amount of money that we need in order to be able to operate our schools. So we're on the case, and we'll continue to keep the community updated as we make progress.
So this next question came up a number of times. Will there be a cost for additional CTE staff?
Another good question. So the way that we built the project was we spoke with our administrative team and our staff early on. As early on as last spring, we began some of these conversations just to get an idea because we knew full well, at the end of the day, we were going to need a bond proposition to allow for these changes to our career and technical education program. We certainly weren't going to compound that by asking for more money from the taxpayers as a result of the approval of the actual budget itself. We knew we needed to utilize the existing staff that we have, and we've been able to effectively do that. So ultimately, what we're doing is we're repurposing staff that we currently have in our buildings. As an example, we have currently right now a woodworking program where our kids and our staff do a really wonderful job building all sorts of wood structure systems. We have a metal shop where kids are able to do work in that area. So we're repurposing the teachers that are teaching those programs. So that woodworking teacher, as an example, is now going to be teaching a construction class. So instead of teaching the woodworking component of it, they'll teach electric, HVAC, plumbing. Again, not to devalue, because I think it's incredibly important that kids work with their hands, but with the thought that this is going to lead to something that's job related, right? You can clearly understand that there's a need for skilled trades. Using that same teacher, we're able to repurpose some of their work or reposition them in a way that they're capable of now of teaching that class. And again, our staff was wonderful in this process because they come with so much experience, and they're able to teach a lot of these classes based upon their expertise in these particular areas.
So this next question has to do with state aid. Will we receive additional state aid to reduce costs related to the bond and all?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Dr. Thompson?
will we receive additional state aid to reduce costs?
So yes, so I mentioned before that 55% of the cost of this project will come from state sources. So yes, so in fact, 55% of the total cost will come from state sources and will help to support the community and offset the cost at the local level. Somebody brought up an interesting point in another form that I think is probably worth spending just a minute talking about, and that's our taxpayer money anyway, right? So we're just using our money again to be able to help offset the cost because it's still, if it's part of a state source, then it's part of the tax base. And they're in fact right. Absolutely. That the state money that we get is from state income taxes, right, that are collected by our residents here in Farmingdale. The benefit, though, of a project like this is, and again, the only thing I can use is an example that I know of right now. Our sister district, Plain View, is going through a bond proposition right now themselves, and they're in the same spot that we are, right? They get a percentage of their bond paid for, and it comes from state sources. So the benefit to the community of approving a bond proposition at the local level is that at least your tax dollars come back here to Farmingdale. Because if for whatever the reason we didn't have a bond proposition or the bond proposition is voted down, those tax dollars that we're sending up from our income taxes would otherwise go to another school system. This gives us the opportunity to get some of our valuable tax dollars back here, serving our own kids in our own community. Great question.
Next question, will we have to allow school districts to use our program? So sort of the regionalization debate that was recently in the news.
Yep. So we took a real hard line on that. Our Board of Education was emphatically supporting that, or in opposition to the regionalization effort. There was too much connected to it that caused them a level of concern. They actually voted on a resolution right before the break, indicating that they had no interest in participating in any portion of the process, whether or not it was the data collection process or the collaboration that comes on the backside of it. I subsequently, upon direction from the board, wrote a letter to the Commissioner of Education indicating that the district is not participating in any level of the plan. And we have received correspondence back indicating that they acknowledge, receipt of the letter and that Farmingdale has opted out of the regionalization. So you could be assured that if the community does support this project, these facilities will be utilized by our Farmingdale students only.
The next question sort of has to do with the spaces that are going to come as a result of the construction project and why we need classrooms or facilities upgrades for these types of programs. For example, EMTs are trained at the local fire department.
Right. So it's kind of, I guess, two parts to that question, right? The first part is, why do we need to entertain renovations to our building for the spaces in question? I'll do that one first, and then we'll get to the EMT program specifically. And the first part of the question is the spaces need to be built differently because we're looking to do different things. So, and again, I'll try to use a practical example. I'll use the same space, that construction lab that we're referring to. Right now, the space that we're currently housing our woodworking program is a good space for the purpose that it was built for, right? It was built to be able to house a woodworking program. But our vision for this is to be able to prepare kids to be able to enter into the skilled trades industries, right? The electrical industry, the plumbing industry, framing, finish work, whether or not that's sheetrock, spackle, tile work. And the vision behind the program is, and as an example, if we had a 4-year program and year 1 was electrical, year 2 was plumbing, year 3 was HVAC, in year 4, the renovation to the building would allow for the building or the construction of a new 2-story addition off the back. And our kids in their last year with us would have in some sort of a block schedule, right? A 3 or 4 period block, would be able to build a house inside of our actual school. So in the end, their level of marketability goes through the roof when not only can they speak to the individual trades that they've been trained on, but on top of that, they can actually build a house from beginning to end, foundation, structure, finish, the rough electric, the rough plumbing, the whole thing, because of the fact that they could build that obviously makes them that much more marketable. They could speak to every aspect of the trade that led to them building a house from beginning to end. So we need, different spaces, a bigger space, a two-story addition in some instances, in order to meet the needs of the programs that we're talking about. The other part, with regard to the EMT, you're absolutely right. Our volunteer fire departments do already house programs that allow, at no cost, and to our students, or to those junior firefighters that are going through some of those programs. The problem that we're having with a lot of our first responders is the level of participation. We've worked with some of our volunteer leadership teams that have indicated volunteer firefighters are in dire need. The amount of demand now that's out there, the amount of requirements that are out there in the industry, and compared to the amount of participation is dramatically different. And we need a larger number of volunteers entering the industry. This program, we think, will inspire kids. If it's a class that's actually offered in our high school, to give them a taste of what some of these programs are, while at the same time providing those certifications, should incentivize more of our kids to enter that, which provides us, obviously at the end of the day, a better, safer community. So part of the construction is about absolutely providing spaces that are essential, and most of the costs associated with this project are dedicated to those spaces. There's smaller costs, although we need some equipment. It's nowhere near what we would need for the construction lab. We still do need some, additional facilities in order to be able to support even like an EMT related class. Great question.
Okay, so this next question asks whether or not we can generate revenue from field or our athletic fields use or the pool use to maintain facilities.
Yes, we can. And yes, we do already do that. So in Farmingdale, board policy on facility use designates that anybody that has 75% of the organization as residents are able to utilize our facilities for no cost, right? We don't want to charge our own residents for the use of our facilities. Obviously, they are tax paying, members of this community. They're already paying for the facility, so there's no reason for us to go ahead and charge a fee for our own residents to be able to use our facilities. That being the case, anyone that doesn't meet the residency requirements, which there are some, do get charged a fee, and it is a pretty steep fee that helps to support costs, associated with the budget and offset, what would otherwise be the tax levy or the burden that's beset on our taxpayers. So we do have a portion of our revenue stream that helps to do that, because we do charge outside organizations that use our facilities. But again, it's important to note that if you are a resident of the community and you do have 75% of the group that meets that residency requirement, you do not get charged, because we would never do that.
Okay. This next question asks about the project in general. Are there any other safety or security upgrades for this bond other than Farmingdale High School?
So I'm going to try to answer that in maybe two parts. One is yes, from a safety standpoint, you got to be careful here, because the renovation of the roof system is important now, because we're dealing with leaks that occur in our buildings. Again, we're not at a point where anything is catastrophic, or we're worried about closing a school. We're well prepared to be able to handle any of the things that are happening right now. But we are getting to a point where those leaks are starting to become more and more apparent to us, starting to cost more money, and starting to cause some interruption to the academic environment. And obviously, it creates a safer space if we can improve the building envelope, right? If we can keep water out of our building, generally speaking, it does provide a safer environment. So that is one component of the project that is base safety. But the bigger portion of the safety related renovation happens over at Farmingdale High School, where we're moving the nurse's office to the front of the building, really alleviating traffic. We've talked about that a couple of times throughout this bond process, that the purpose of moving the health office to the front of the building is to pull a lot of the traffic that comes in and out of the building when we have sick kids, or parents that need to drop off forms, or parents that need to consult with our nursing staff. They have to traverse through the building. They have to actually move through some of the highest student occupied spaces, like the commons. They pass by the cafeterias. They pass by the bathrooms. They pass by the North Gymnasium. This would avoid all of that. So we would significantly limit the amount of traffic that comes in and out of the building, while at the same time, this also calls for the building of a new security vestibule in the front of Farmingdale High School. Let me just a second to talk about that. So back in 2012, post Sandy Hook, We changed the way in which we built our buildings, right? Or we tried to take the architecture that we were handed and reimagine that in a way that created a safer environment. And what we did is we created limited access vestibules in all of our schools, our high school included. Our high school by far is the busiest building, more traffic in that building than anywhere else. But the security access vestibule in the high school looks similar to the other ones because, again, we just retrofitted what we were given at the time because we didn't have the resources to be able to really rebuild the front of all of our buildings. This is an opportunity right now to do that, not only to move the nurse's office to the front of the building, limiting traffic in the building, but building a new secure limited access vestibule where our security staff would actually be there in that same space behind a glass wall, obviously, but they would be occupying the same space so they can really check people in better than the system that we have right now. Again, it doesn't fix it for all the buildings, but the highest need right now, which is Farmingdale High School, would be remedied and would be a safer place as a result of approval of Proposition 2 from this bond proposition.
Next question. Will classroom instruction be displaced while construction is occurring?
Yeah, so there'll be some level of interruption, right? There's no way that you entertain a project, of this scale without understanding that there's some level of interruption to the academic environment. But we are going to be really thoughtful about the way in which we do it. And we've had a lot of experience doing projects, over my 18-year career here in minimizing what that interruption might look like. And I'll try to give you some examples. So as an example, right, when we first get started with the project, with the assumption that the community supports us and we get a yes on Tuesday, there's going to be a demolition need, right? You can't do demo related work right in the middle of the academic day. Not going to work. It's going to cause, a lot of noise, and plenty of interruptions to the academic environment that we won't allow happen. So that portion of the project will probably have to be done in the after hours, right? When our kids are not in the building. Other components of the project, once the building envelope has been built and it's quieter and there's no interruption to the environment, we can entertain some of the projects during the day. But we're going to have to be really thoughtful about what permission we give the contractors, and we will do that so that they understand what they're actually agreeing to when they agree to take on the project. That's one part. The other part of the project is the phasing in of it. And similar in vein to when we did the athletic project, we understood full well that it can't be all at the same time, right? We couldn't take away all the fields here in Farmingdale at the same time. It would wreak havoc on our athletic program and our youth sports program here in Farmingdale. So we did it in phases, and we're going to have to do the same thing here. There's no way that we can sort of demolish and rebuild the entire performing arts area all at the same time, right? There's just too many kids that are coming in and out of the program. We're going to have to work with our team, our administrative team, our teachers to phase this thing in a way that it creates the least interruption possible and allows for the full operation of our current program until the spaces start to open. But again, another great question.
Okay. Will there be additional equipment related costs to these CTE programs?
Yes, but those are entirely included in the actual bond number. So part of the build out of this project is a complete renovation of the spaces, but also all of the equipment that's needed in order to be able to run these programs is all included in the actual bond number. So there's no additional costs, assuming that the community again votes yes on these propositions on Tuesday. We'll have everything that we need in order to be able to not only build the space, but put all of the needed equipment and relevant equipment in those spaces.
So this question has to do with sort of when tennis courts will return for the pool location, and why we're also lining courts for pickleball on those locations.
So sort of like the timeline for the completion of the project, and then why pickleball?
Yes.
Okay. So if you've gone to the back of the high school, you'll see the project is really nearing its conclusion. We are preparing to open the space. Again, we're in the dead of winter. Chances are people aren't going to be spending a lot of time playing tennis in the dead of winter, but we do expect that space to be open very soon. The construction fences are down, so you can really now get a feel for what the facility looks like in its final form. So we're right there, with our promise to the community that we would finish that project where we started. Because if you can remember back all the way to 2000, and it was around 2018 when we started that project, the first thing that we did was we demolished the tennis courts that were in the parking lot that's behind Farmingdale High School. we're coming all the way back around to where we started, and we're finishing the project by putting them back, and obviously a better location than putting them in the middle of a parking lot. That portion of the project's in good order. And why pickleball courts? Good question. Pickleball courts really, and the vision behind any project that we do here in the community is that we need to make sure that we're serving not only our students, obviously that's first and foremost, and that's primary, but we also want to make sure that these facilities service our residents as well. And the growing demand for pickleball is very real. It is becoming all the rage. I know it full well here within our own community that there's lots of people that I'm connected to that play pickleball regularly. So offering them a place to play, offering them, a commitment that we're supporting our residents as a whole with our school system is something that's been important to us, and that will do that. And it's also a little bit of a nod toward the future. As crazy as it might sound, there's been conversations going on at the state level that pickleball, because it's become so big, it's actually now a professional sport. And there are people that make enormous amounts of money as professionals in the pickleball world, millions of dollars, in fact, for some of the top pickleball players in the nation, that this could actually become a Section 8 sponsored sport, New York State sanctioned sport for pickleball. So being prepared to not only be able to continue to have our tennis team, but being able to build upon that now and possibly be ready to build a pickleball team when, in fact, the state comes around with it, which I do think is a matter of time. It was another benefit of putting the pickleball courts back there.
Okay. Sort of another timeline related question, but what will be the timeline for the music renovation specifically?
So if you kind of play this out, I'll kind of take you step by step through it so you can understand it a little better. If we get permission on Tuesday from the community, and we get that yes vote, we actually already set up our first meeting on Friday. It's just there penciled in on the calendar so that we can get going on our work right away. To begin to build out the project a little better. When I say better, I mean right now what the community is looking at are, renderings that are built off of sketches and the like that our architects have put into play. You need to get real granular, and we didn't want to incur any of those architectural costs until we knew that we had permission from the community to move ahead. But there's a difference between the renderings that you're looking at and full-blown construction documents that would include, fire suppression systems and egress doors and window systems that meet state education department regulations. Like there's a lot of things that still need to be put into play. That process takes months, probably anywhere between 4 to 6 months in order for us to really get to the point where we have finalized construction drawings that we could submit to the state. Once we do, and we're good with it, and our staff is good with it, and our industry partners are good with it, because a part of this project has to do with the work that we've been doing with industry partners in these areas, because we want to make sure that the spaces that we're building meet the demands of industry, right? If we're going to have our kids be prepared to enter the workforce, it would be intelligent, and we're certainly going to make sure that we interact with those people so that we build the spaces that would allow us to train the kids on the skills that are specifically needed right now, within our locale. So once we get all of those people together and we have a real solid plan, we know exactly what these things are going to look like, we submit it to the state, say 6 months out. It's going to take another 6 months for the state. Facilities planning is the department of the state education department that will review this. They review the plans. That's about another 6 months for them to review it and give us permission. So we're probably about a year from having permission to begin to bid the project out publicly and get some contractors in to start the work. At that point in time, especially for the music renovation, we're going to be phasing that work into. Can't knock down the whole space. We have a choral room, we have an orchestra room, we have a band room. We're gonna have to figure out a way to phase that work in over time so that we keep some of those spaces active so kids still have places to rehearse and get ready for concerts and performances. So that'll be phased in. What my assumption would be about a year after that, so about the 2-year mark, the first of those spaces would start to open, and probably 2.5 to 3 years out, we would be at completion. We would be at a point where all of those facilities would be open. So long answer, but I wanted to make sure you understood it fully. Somewhere between 2 and 3 years. 2 years, some of the spaces, and hopefully by that 3rd year, those spaces are all fully open and ready for our kids to occupy and utilize.
All right. The next question, will there be taxpayer refunds after town corrections?
Got it. This is connecting back to the question that I answered earlier about the changes in the Babylon residents.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for you right now on that one specifically. Again, Town of Babylon partners, Supervisor Schaefer and his team were fantastic about working together to come to some sort of a resolution. I don't know what that resolution is going to look like, but I can assure you that you have our commitment here from both the Town of Babylon and the school system to rectify this, because what happened was unjust. It was unfair and inappropriate, and we're not going to allow a glitch or whatever it is that occurred, from the equalization rates that we received at the state level to have that kind of negative impact on our taxpayers. So, we're going to keep fighting for you, and we'll keep the lines of communication open so that way we can identify the way in which this is going to be rectified with our Town of Babylon parents and community members, not just our parents, but all community members.
Okay. So during construction, will there be protections for students for things like asbestos?
Yes, absolutely. There are a tremendous amount of regulations that we have to attend to here in order to make sure that we maintain a safe environment during the construction phase. I mentioned before, some of it is going to be based upon timing. When we perform certain components or certain parts of the projects. Some of it might have to be done during the summer months. Some of it might have to be done after hours in order to just avoid our students coming in contact with those environments at all. In other instances, there's a tremendous amount of regulation connected to, dealing with asbestos containing materials. And we will, make sure that every one of those regulations are put into play, whether or not it's the appropriate cordoning off of those spaces, the way in which we air test. So there's 3 air tests that are required every time you go through an asbestos renovation. There's got to be air quality testing happening in the actual space where the renovation is happening. There's got to be asbestos happening right outside, and there's got to be asbestos testing that happens in the ambient environment. And there's comparisons that we run to make sure that the environments are safe at all times. Negative pressured systems that allow for any of the air that's being any of the asbestos that could become airborne is sucked out of the building in an appropriate manner. So all of those systems and more will be put into place to make sure that our students and our staff are never in jeopardy, physical or otherwise, during this renovation.
So this question asks about the move for the nurses, and why not provide upgrades to all nurses' offices across the district?
A good one. So the renovation for the nurse's office, it's important to note that it's not really just to rebuild the nurse's office. It's not that there's some sort of a significant need that our nursing space that we have right now is not accommodating to our needs from a health service standpoint, because our space does meet the needs of our nursing staff right now. The reason for the move is this renovation is going to impact the front of the building, right? So if you understand the construction of the building, the music area, which is going to be a big portion of the renovation, is going to be impacted. And while we're addressing the front of the building, moving the nurse's office to the front makes sense because we've been talking about that for quite some time now. This would be the right time to do it, not because we need it from a nursing standpoint, but we need it from a safety standpoint, and more specifically at the high school than other buildings, again, because of the traffic. For those of you that have high school students, you probably understand that our high school never sleeps. That is pretty much a near 24-hour, operation. Physicals and things of the sort all come through our high school for sports. So there's a lot more traffic at Farmington High School. So there's a lot more need for us to renovate that particular nursing station than at some of the other buildings. But it's really more safety related. And one of the other things that it's probably worth mentioning now is there's another ancillary benefit associated with moving the nurse's office, because as I mentioned before, the nurse's office sits dead smack in the middle of Farmingdale High School, which is really not the ideal place for it because of the fact that our parents or anybody else that has to access the nurse's office literally has to move through all of our student occupied spaces. One of the benefits of moving the nurse's office is it leaves their space currently vacant, which would allow us the ability to move some of the other staff that work more directly with our students, like our security staff, our dean staff, into a location that is more centrally located, because that's where we want the staff that works from a student safety standpoint, we want them located right in the middle of the building. So there's like an ancillary benefit of moving the nurses to the front by occupying the space that's currently in the nurse's office with some of those safety and security staff members.
Okay, so this question is with regard to whether or not the bond fails, and if it does, what's the plan to address facilities and the roofs specifically?
A really great question, and one that we consider throughout this process. I was talking, to my wife actually about this, and the reality of, and I promise we've worked tirelessly to do everything that we possibly can to put together a really thoughtful plan that we think is great for our students and great for our community. In total, like I think that this benefits our community members too, from a housing value standpoint, right? And the kinds of programs that they could benefit from on top of this, like our continuing community education program is going to be awesome because there's so much more we can do with it now that we have these newer facilities on top of some of the programs that we offer. There's way more that we can do now for our community, similar in vein to what we did when we built the aquatic center. All the programs that we have running through that building right now are awesome. Our senior citizens are getting tremendous use out of that. The same can be said for this proposition as well. There's a lot of benefit to it, but the reality is, at the end of the day, you can only do so much. We could work as hard as we can, building a good plan and working hard to communicate that plan. But the voters, at the end of the day, through a truly democratic process, we'll make a decision on Tuesday as to whether or not we get the yes or not. If it is a no, we can't stop. And again, that's not an arrogance, but there's components of this project that are absolutely essential, right? The roofing systems have to be addressed. That's not something that we could turn a blind eye to. We have to address that at some point in time. Period. The end. The building envelope obviously protects the integrity of the building and the assets that the community pays for. If you don't have a roof system keeping water out over time, left unaddressed, this is eventually going to start to cause real big problems, real catastrophic type problems. So some of it is absolutely imperative, and some of it is also is important. And I don't want to say that it's not imperative, but it's important. You can think about your own home, right? If you had a kitchen that was built 60 years ago, I'm not saying that everybody's in a place where they're able to pay for the money or to put the money out to renovate their kitchen today, but at some point in time, you do have to address the kitchen. You are gonna have to address the bathrooms. They get to a point where they're in disrepair enough where you have to address them. And the facilities that we're referring to with our music, our fine arts, as well as our CTE spaces have to be addressed at some point in time. So, we're going to be back at some point to talk about it, maybe a little bit differently. I think one of the things that I've considered, because, we have to behave in the same manner in which we expect our students to behave, right? So in the event of defeat, we're going to have to entertain a conversation with the community. There's a great tool called Thought Exchange, which we might entertain with our community. I'll talk to the board about that, in the coming weeks in the event of the fact that the bond doesn't pass, using that as a way to ask our community, like, what could we do different, right? So if we're not successful for one reason or another, what could have been different that would have changed your mind? Is it money related? Is it facility related? Is it the way in which we communicated this? Let's get some insights from our communities to what we could do differently in order to be able to do something different to get this thing back in front of the community. Because again, in some sense or another, and at some point in time, both projects would need to be reconsidered. And I promise you, that there's no quit. There's no quit here, on the school district's behalf. We're gonna have to figure it out one way or another, and we will do just that.
Okay. And then similar, are there options for Prop 1 to pass without Prop 2?
Yeah, so we built it in a way of creating sort of the essential nature of both are there, but there's a more essential nature connected to the roofing and the electrical upgrades that we're looking for. So the way that it works, so that everyone has it, Proposition 1 and Proposition 2, you will be voting independently on each proposition. You can vote yes or no for both. The way that it works is if you vote yes for Proposition 1 and yes for Proposition 2, we have an approved bond, and we will commence with the full work. If we get a yes on Proposition 1 and a no on Proposition 2, we have permission to go ahead and we will do the electrical and the roofing upgrades as a result of the approval of Proposition 1. If we get a no on Proposition 1 and a yes on Proposition 2, we have nothing. We can't commence with Proposition 2 unless the community also agrees, to allow us the ability to do the roofing and electrical upgrades. So 2 is contingent on 1. We can get 1 and 2, or we can get neither, is the way that this thing will play out when the voters actually go to the polls to vote on Tuesday.
Okay. Has there been any consideration for a police station similar to the one at Farmingdale College with regard to safety and security? A little bit off the bond topic, but a question nonetheless that was worthy.
Yeah, and I don't want to turn away questions, but I'll try to be brief. This one's not directly connected to the bond, but a good question. And the answer is yes. We have explored that before. Had the benefit of being the project save officer, the safety officer here in our schools for 11 years before taking on the superintendent responsibility 7 years ago. During that stretch of time, I did work with the Nassau County Police Department, who were wonderful in the process. There's absolutely no blame on this. And for all sorts of technical reasons, it made it very difficult for them to do that. I thought it would be a great idea since I love having police officers in our building. They create a safer environment for us. We appreciate our officers here in Farmingdale. There's, anytime that they're around and they're helping us, even if they're just walking the building, doing a tour, we appreciate having them in our buildings. The more of that, the safer we would be. So having this place being used as a place where they could change to get ready for work, or a place where they can get a bite to eat or take a break would be wonderful. But there were technical related issues, that didn't allow us the ability to go ahead and pursue that project. And if you wanted to talk more about that, whoever asked that question, you could certainly give my office a call, and either myself or, someone else will go through that with you in more greater detail. But we did explore that, and just technically it didn't work. But it is a great idea, interestingly enough, and something that we did consider here a number of years ago.
So this next question asks for consideration or the plan with regard to construction for neighbors across the street or neighbors in the direct vicinity of the construction project.
Yeah. Never want to overpromise here, because anytime you do construction, there's a level of interruption that occurs not only for us, but for those in the surrounding community. There's no avoiding that. I promise you that we will work in partnership with you to minimize that level of interruption. We will communicate openly with you, to the neighbors that are obviously, directly across the street from where some of the construction is going to be happening. I've done that before. Years ago when we had done the first bond renovation, there were residents that were directly across the street from the south parking lot area. I had met with some of the residents in their homes to talk about things that could be done in order to try to, improve upon the condition even during the construction, and what the aesthetic would be after the construction was completed. And we came up with some ideas as to planting some trees and doing some things that we were able to, you were able to do to try to better that environment for our residents. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to be open with the communication. We're going to try to do the best we can, answering questions and providing any level of support we can to our residents. But again, without over-promising, because any level of construction always causes some level of interruption, but promise that we'll work with you to the best of our ability.
You touched on this a little bit with regard to music, and maybe you addressed a construction timeline to occupy the spaces. So when you believe that students will be able to occupy the newly renovated or constructed spaces.
Yeah, so a little bit of a repeat. So I mentioned, to be sort of real specific about that, about 2 years I have where our students are starting to occupy some of the new spaces. And my assumption would be at about the 3-year mark, we would be at a point where the construction would be at what we call substantially complete, right? Enough, far enough along where the students are able to occupy those spaces. There are things that can interrupt construction environments. I can't give you, every level of assurance that is absolutely written in stone. In fairness, we had approval from the community to pursue the project here, which I think was a success. Our aquatic center, our fields here, fields at all the other buildings are the beautification process of the stadium over from the high school was all included in the last bond proposition. And had we known that there was going to be a pandemic right in the middle, I don't think anyone would have saw that coming, and it delayed the project quite a bit. before we're able to come back around and finish the project out. So there are things that could occur that could delay this, but best estimate right now is somewhere between 2 years. Kids are starting to occupy the space, and at the 3-year mark, we're done. Contractors are off site, and we're in full use.
This question is about foundation aid and the reconfiguration that was occurring in recent months. And does this have an impact on New York State's 55% share of our capital?
That's a fantastic question, and probably lends to the importance of considering the date of this particular bond vote. So the simple answer to the question is no. Foundation aid and capital aid are not connected at all. And capital aid, once you're grandfathered in, is a constant, right? We don't have to worry about after. There's no history, right? I shouldn't say that so emphatically, but there's no history to speak to that would indicate that the capital aid formulas would ever change, right? I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And during that period of time, the capital aid formulas have changed, but the formula that was used when the project here in our schools was approved was maintained during the life of the debt service obligation or whatever the payment schedule was. So they never changed it. They grandfathered us in once we locked in a project. They might change the formula for subsequent projects, but they locked in the formula and grandfathered you into the current system. So the simple answer to that question is no. I have no evidence to support the fact that there would be anything else, but we would lock into the 50%, 55%. But your point is a good one, because it does open the door to, could the state change the formula and require the local taxpayer to pay more, if we wind up having to reconsider this project in a year? And the answer to that is possibly, right? There's a lot of consideration connected to foundation aid and other state aid formulas. It would be probably in our best interest to lock that in as soon as we can, before the state is able to make any changes to it. But again, I have no reason to believe that we wouldn't be grandfathered into the current system, and we would have the 55% that we are committing to, written in stone for us for the remainder of the project.
So this next question is somewhat related in a couple of areas with regard to the $70 increase and the 90, I believe, are those numbers that you had referenced. But the question is about the difference between those two in a timeline and the schedule for the old bond coming off in relation to this new bond.
So the two parts. One is connected to how did we come to the $70?
Yeah.
And then how's the new bond and old bonds that are coming off the rolls connected?
Yeah.
Got it. So the $70 number, and we put this out in a couple of different documents, but it's absolutely worth repeating because it is a bit complicated. Is actually broken up into 3 different phases from a community tax impact standpoint. For the first 5 years of the project, the actual cost to the residents comes in at $90 for the first 5 years. For the next decade, because of the fact that old debt service is coming off the rolls and new state aid, because of the fact that the project is going to be covered through state aid formulas, comes on. So there's a mixture of things that are happening. But because of the old debt coming off and the new state aid coming on, there'll be a 10-year stretch where it goes back down to zero, meaning there's no additional cost associated with this project for our community at all for years 6 all the way through year 15. For the last portion of the project, it jumps back up to about $100 a year per resident for the remainder of the bond, which is the last 15 years. So you got the first 5 comes in at 90, then you got a stretch of time for about a decade that it goes to zero, and then you get the last 15 years where it goes back up to $100. When you add all that up and you do some simple division, you come up with an average of about $70 per year per household. I think I kind of answered the other question because the debt service obligations time themselves, and we did this on purpose. We've become better at this, understanding how the debt service obligations are going to impact our community because we want to try to soften this, impact. And the timing of this new debt coming on is important to us because it creates this lesser obligation instead of the levy dropping and then all of a sudden you bouncing it back up and having a big tax increase. This allows us the ability to kind of smooth it out over the duration of the 30 years.
This next question: who approves the final construction plans?
Good question. So quick little lesson. We are the ones that have the responsibility as district officials. Again, working with industry partners because we want to, again, make sure that those facilities do match industry standards. We put things together. Basically, we're gonna help our architects build those construction documents. So we'll come up with here are the things that we need. Our architects that have been in the industry for decades will actually build the construction documents to make sure that we are adhering to all of the safety, the OSHA, all the other requirements that are set upon us from a regulatory standpoint. They'll build the construction documents for us. We send that up to the State Education Department, Office of Facilities Planning. They have the final say. So at the end of the day, they look at the drawings to make sure that they match all of the regulations at the state level. They are our overseers, and they would be the ones at the end of the day that would give us permission to pursue the project. And upon completion of the project, they actually are the ones that hand us the certificate of occupancy, the CO that allows us to reoccupy those spaces. So it's the State Education Department of Facilities Planning that has the final say on approving the plans.
So this question asks about the investment itself. What CTE programs, certifications, and internship opportunities will there be for students with the approval of the bond?
So a whole host of additional pathways. And again, I want to just draw a line of distinction between what we offer now, which is the best way I can explain is like a taste of, right? A sampling. You get the ability to try something to see if it's something that might fit for you, which is what we have right now in a vast majority of our career and technical education programs, to certifications. And I'll give you a couple of very pragmatic examples. So like medical assisting program will end in a certification after 2 years where students will have the certification to be able to enter a hospital and work immediately as a medical assistant or a phlebotomist. Our cosmetology and barbering program will end in a certification that will actually provide them with the licensure that they need to be able to work immediately in any salon, or barbershop, that might be here in the state of New York. They'll actually get the licensure, similar in vein to, if you went to school at Paul Mitchell, you would get the licensure to be a licensed cosmetologist. It's about just under a $20,000, I think, cost for that licensure. We would be able to provide that at no cost to our kids. We'd have the staff in place to be able to provide that service to our kids at no additional cost to them or our families or our taxpayers. Our construction, right, would end in the ability for our students to be able to enter into internship opportunities in their last year, so that not only are they generating the requisite skills that they need as they move through these programs over the course of the 4 years, but after that, they will have already had an internship experience so that they can start to work immediately with, some of those specific trade industries, the union partners that are out there. So that's a sampling, but that's the vision behind all of these programs, is they end with an actual credential that allows you the ability to enter into the workforce immediately. In the event that that's the plan, right? Because that could just be the plan, right? There could be a plan that somebody wants to be a police officer or a firefighter, and this program offers them an opportunity to be able to get some credentials that get them immediately into the industry. Or it could be that some of our kids, who might be attending 4-year colleges, have an opportunity to get into some of these programs and access these programs, even though they're going to 4-year colleges. As an example, again, and I'm going to use a practical example of our medical assisting program, which is built in the same vein as what we're looking to do, with this renovation, with this bond proposition. We have kids that are in the program right now that are using it in the way that I've spoken to you about before, right? That they want the degree in medical assisting because they want the job right out of high school. We have a number of kids that absolutely want either a nursing degree or they want to become full-fledged doctors. And this program offers them, a pathway, to become, first off, obviously more qualified to apply for some of the programs, right? So they'd have more in-depth knowledge through an application process to a potential nursing college or something that they'd be looking to attend in that 4-year program, or give them the assurance that that is what they want, because that's something else we talk about here a lot in Farmingdale. The things have gotten really, really costly from a college standpoint, and trying to give kids real programmatic opportunities that not only can end in a credential that gives them a job, but can give kids that might want to go to a 4-year university a taste of something to make sure that is what, in fact, they want to do before they go and spend a ton of money on college for it. This bond will provide for both of those students, not only the kids that are in those skilled trade pathways, but also kids that might just want to taste it, but are going to a 4-year university anyway. Both will have access to this program.
That's perfect. That was the next question. It had to do with students who are accessing these programs and whether they're college bound or not, can they take advantage of the programs? And you answered that.
Yes.
Our final questions are kind of one is again is a repeat with regard to the facilities upgrades that are needed. Then why prioritize pickleball courts?
I kind of answered that, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll go a little further on that one. It's a legitimate question, right? If you're looking at the need for us to be able to do, a roofing based system, why would we have done a pickleball court, right? You could look back and, why would we have renovated our gymnasiums, right? Which is something that we've done this past summer. Why would we have installed air conditioners, in all of our buildings? Like, I can go on and on with the host of projects that we have committed to, over the course of the last several years. And, not to be silly and say, that pickleball is more important than a roofing system, but there's a level of value that everything that we do has with our community. And part of our responsibility is to figure out how to phase all of this stuff in over time to meet the high demand that we have here in Farmingdale. And again, I'm proud of the fact that our community demands a lot of us. They don't expect run of the mill. They don't expect us to just check boxes and just meet the bare minimum. There's a level of expectation that we have that our schools should be spectacular, and should meet the needs of all of our community members and all of our students. And that's what we try to do. We try to phase projects in over time that meet the needs of all of our community. And it's important to note, we didn't wait for the roofing situation to get to a point where we're preparing for catastrophe, right? Our roofs are out of warranty. We're at a point in time where we have to start to address these kinds of issues. We're not at those catastrophic levels with regard to the roofing system. It is something that needs to be the next priority for us. But we're not at catastrophe levels. No different than, let's just say the community does approve this project and we have permission to go ahead and we finish the roof renovations. I could tell you, probably in the next decade or so, maybe a little bit past that, there are other projects that we might have to come back around to. Boiler renovations, right? Window renovations, which were done about 15 years ago. At some point in time, we're going to have to renovate the windows again. That'll all be a part of us sort of phasing in these projects over time. But it's not to say during that period of time between now and then that we don't entertain other projects that are also important, to our community member, although maybe not quite as important, are important nonetheless. And, we don't discount those just because they don't rise to the level of roof renovation as an example. So hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah. The last two were really relative to what we're doing right now, whether or not you're providing those answers. You've done so in this webinar. And then one that you'll have to follow up with the individual who asked the question about the percentage of taxpayers who have students in Farmingdale schools.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have an answer, on that as of yet. But that answer will be provided before the end of the week. We have a frequently asked questions portion of our website, where we'll post, a more complete response to that question. It's just not data that I have sitting on hand right now, the percentage of taxpayers that have students in Farmingdale schools. I have a rough idea of how much that is, but I don't want to shoot from the hip on that one. I want to make sure that we get a real good answer. So I'll post something up on our FAQ page, before the end of the week. So you have that information before you make a decision, at the polls on Tuesday.
Those are all the questions.
Okay. So I just wrap it up real quick. Again, thank you for taking the time, to listen to this. I hope it was informative. I hope the answers were as clear and as concise as I could muster. I wanted to be thoughtful in the way I would respond to them, but not be, not to speak for too long. But I wanted to give thoughtful, full answers to everybody because I believe that you're owed that. Again, this is not the last opportunity that you will have to ask questions. You might have an opportunity again. You will have an opportunity again over the next couple of days to post things to our FAQ page on the district's website, and we'll continue to watch that and try to answer those questions. If I could just use whatever, the last 30 seconds, just as a, please come out and vote. However this turns out at the end of the day, I'm extremely proud of our effort. We put forward the best effort we can, putting together what we think is something really important at this time, at this juncture, in our school district's history, to do something that I think is really important for our kids and really important for our community. Also responsible, to our taxpayers. I think we've also done the best job that we can communicating this thoughtfully, to our residents as well. And it's a democratic process. I understand that. We can only do so much. As of Tuesday, our portion of this is over, and your portion of this begins, and the community's responsibility at that point in time to get out to the polls and vote. And make a decision as to the value associated with these programs in comparison with the $70 per year cost, and where you stand in deciding on whether or not there's enough value for you to vote in favor or not for this bond proposition. But again, I want to thank everybody for taking their time tonight, and again, keep those questions coming. Look forward to a successful vote and hope to see you on Tuesday.